Good morning. We are now live. I see a lot of students are joining us. Welcome. We'll give you just a minute to tune in. All right, a lot of you guys are logging in. We will go ahead and get started. Welcome to our information session. Thanks so much for tuning in. We know that there's a lot of questions. We don't have every answer, but we're glad that you're tuned in because hopefully we can help you and help provide some understanding to what is going on in regards to the Student and Exchange Visitor Program immigration policy related to fall 2020. My name is Lindsay Walker. I'm the Senior Assistant Dean for the Office of Global Affairs. And I have with me on this information session, Meg Gambino, who is the Director of Visa and Immigration Services. We have Laura Hurst, who also is a team member in Visa and Immigration Services, and you guys have probably worked with her a lot. And then we also have Stacy Aquara, who is from International Undergraduate Admissions. So she was kind enough to join us for those of you who are undergrads and new admits and may have questions pertaining to that process. So thanks to them for being on this information session. We reviewed the questions that you submitted. We are going to do our best to answer as many of those as possible. We have a formal presentation we're going to go through that we hope will help answer a lot of your questions. And then certainly we will have an opportunity to answer the questions that you want to ask here live on this event. What I encourage you to do is use the Q&A function. So while the chat feature is enabled, we will likely not be able to follow the chat fully. So if you want a question answered, ask it through the Q&A functionality, and we will do our best to answer those questions. Any that we can't answer live, if it's questions that pertain to the general international student body, we'll make sure we do our best to answer those through our FAQ page. If you haven't visited that page, please do so. We are updating that every day throughout the day with information as it becomes available. So check the Visa and Immigration Services FAQ page for updates on information. Hopefully you guys saw the email that President McInnes sent yesterday affirming the university's support to our international students. I encourage you to make sure you read that email and know that we as a university support you, and we are here to do our best to inform you and advocate for you in every way that we can. Another really exciting thing is that before President McInnes even officially started on July 1, she was wanting to engage with you, our international students, and that is why we have arranged for the webinar on Monday, July 20th at 11 a.m. So it's a webinar with President McInnes, and she will be answering your questions as international students. You received an email, I think it was last week, with the opportunity to submit some questions. So that's going to be a really great webinar where she will be there with our Vice President and Vice Provost, Dr. Jun Liu, as well as some international students who will be represented in that session asking questions on behalf of you, our international students. So we encourage you to participate in that webinar on Monday. So with that being said, we'll move forward. One last reminder is I do encourage you to keep your questions in this setting general in nature. If you have a very specific question related to your situation, that's best addressed with your Visa and Immigration Services advisor, because we can look into your case, see your specific situation, and help you get the right answer for your question. So if it's a very specific question, hold that for your Visa and Immigration Services advisor. This is an opportunity for us to answer questions that really could benefit the whole. So with that being said, we will I'm going to share my screen, and we will move into the presentation component of our information session. So for fall 2020, on Monday, July 6th, SEVP released guidance for F1 international students regarding the fall semester of study. Then on July the 7th, they posted some additional information, an FAQ document, but unfortunately it didn't clarify everything that we were hoping, and in some ways it created more uncertainties, specifically regarding our F1 students who either choose to or have to remain abroad for the fall 2020 semester. It was our hope that by the time we had this information session with you, that would be clarified, and as of this morning, it hasn't been. But as soon as we have clarification on that, we will be sure to provide that information to you. But based on that guidance, we want to share with you really what does this mean for you for the fall 2020 semester. So what are your options for fall 2020? You can either arrive to campus and enroll full-time. We'll walk through each of these options with you in detail. So arrive to campus, enroll full-time. Admission deferral to spring or to fall 2021. Updating your F1 program to spring 2021. But then studying remotely for fall. So still studying remotely for fall, and then just updating your I-20 start date for those of you who are initial students. The SBU Home Abroad program is available for undergraduate students, and then the Graduate Research Abroad program for graduate students. So arriving to campus and enrolling full-time. So F1 students who are inside the US for the start of the semester. So you're either already in the US or you will be in the US by the start of the fall semester. To maintain your status, you have to be enrolled full-time, and it has to include at least 3 credits of in-person or a hybrid course. Hybrid courses include both in-person and online components, and that does count towards the physical presence requirement and the 3 credits of in-person. Undergrads and grad students at the G1 and G3 level are required to enroll and complete at least 12 credits. That's the requirement for full-time. That hasn't changed. And at least 3 credits of that has to be in person. So 3 credits of your 12 has to be in person or hybrid. It doesn't have to be one class. It could be multiple classes that add up to be 3 credits. For grad students at the G2, G4, and G5 levels, your full-time requirement is 9 credits, and 3 credits of that 9 has to be in person or hybrid. We will provide all students on campus, all F1 students on campus, the opportunity to fulfill this requirement. I know there's been a lot of questions on what does that actually look like. That's being finalized and will be shared with you right away. We encourage you enroll in an in-person or hybrid class if at all possible. If that's not possible and there's nothing that you have available to you to enroll to fulfill that, then we will be in touch with you in the days to come in how we are going to help facilitate that. Visa and Immigration Services is required to issue a new I-20 noting the hybrid instruction model for students. And that's why we have this fall 2020 reporting form that's due today. I understand a lot of you have questions on that. We also understand that it's hard to make a decision when you don't know everything that's out there. But especially for those of you who are either in the US or plan to be in the US for the fall, we are now required to issue new I-20s for every student by August 4th. And that's thousands of I-20s with only a few people issuing those. So that's why it is so important that you submit that form. If you think you are going to be in the US or want to be in the US for the fall 2020 semester, you need to be sure and indicate that on the form so that we can issue an updated I-20 for you. This is important. Stony Brook's formal plan to move fully online for the last week of the semester and then for exams after Thanksgiving, that will not result in the requirement of F1 students to have to depart the US for those of you that are in the US, because that's part of our formal plan that we're submitting to SEVP. If we are forced to move fully online outside of what is our formal plan, as it stands now, it appears as though SEVP would require F1 students to depart the US. However, as you all probably know, that is currently under litigation. And so we're hoping to get more information on that situation in the days to come. For new students who are outside of the United States, new students outside the United States. So this is incoming bachelor's, master's, doctoral students who aren't in the US and cannot enter due to travel restrictions and or visa issues or due to health and safety concerns. Here's your options. Defer your admission. Students admitted for fall 2020 may request to defer their admission to either spring 2021 or fall 2021, and therefore you would not enroll in classes because you're deferring your admission. So you would not enroll in classes even online, and your I-20 would be updated. It's really important to know this is fully at the discretion of international undergraduate admissions or your graduate academic department to approve your deferral. Especially for graduate students, that has to be worked through with your academic department for them to approve your deferral and for what term you may be able to defer to. Then another option would be to update your F1 program to spring 2021. So your I-20 and your Stevis program start date would be updated to January, but you could still study remotely for fall 2020 because you are allowed to study online without status. You do not have to be in F1 status to study online outside of the US at Stony Brook University. So students admitted for fall 2020 could update your F1 program, study remotely from your home country on a full-time or part-time basis because you're not in F1 status, therefore you have no enrollment requirements. So it could be full-time or part-time. This would allow you to begin your studies and have more time to secure a visa and then arrive physically to campus for the spring 2021 semester in F1 status. And then we have the SBU Home Abroad program. This is only available to students who are already committed to the program. The program reached capacity, but for those of you who are new students outside of the US, you can participate in the SBU Home Abroad program for fall 2020, and then you would also have an updated I-20 reflecting your arrival physically to the US and Stony Brook for spring 2021. Continuing students. So continuing students who are outside of the US. So if you are outside during the fall semester, you are eligible to enroll in Stony Brook's online classes from abroad and maintain degree progress regardless of your status. So that's really important to note. You do not have to be in F1 status to enroll online outside of the US. SEVP indicated on 7/6 on the Monday guidance that was provided, they indicated that F1 students outside of the US studying at hybrid institutions, which Stony Brook qualifies as, cannot maintain F1 status while abroad. That was the guidance on Monday. On Tuesday, they provided additional information that indicates that we may not be required to terminate the Stevis records of F1 students who remain abroad. Unfortunately, we still do not have clarity on which in fact is the case. I know that's a challenge for you and we wish that we could clarify it, but this is just outside of our control and we are fully dependent on SEVP providing guidance on exactly what we are required to do in terms of compliance. What we can tell you is that we will not terminate the records of F1 students unless required by SEVP. So until we know that that is something we are required to do, we are not taking action to terminate F1 students who are abroad and remaining abroad for the fall semester. We will notify you in advance once we have clarity and before we start taking any actions on your immigration record. If your record is terminated, we will provide instructions regarding the issuance of a new I-20 for spring. And it's important to know that if you departed before August 25th, which is in the future, okay, so if you depart August 25th or anytime prior, it is unlikely that you will be eligible for the reactivation of your SEVIS record because you would exceed the 5-month being outside of the US. And at this point, we don't anticipate that they will approve those reactivation cases, but we will see. If they provide guidance saying otherwise, then absolutely we will follow every guidance that they provide. So F1 students who are continuing and participating in either approved study abroad or approved research abroad during the fall semester, your F1 status will remain active for the fall semester. You will be registered full-time at Stony Brook, either through the appropriate home abroad course or through the research abroad. And we will authorize in SEVIS that you are authorized for research or study abroad. You'll receive an updated I-20 that identifies this on there, that you are approved for authorized study abroad or research abroad. For PhD level graduate students, if your academic department is agreeable, along with the maintenance of full-time enrollment, authorization for grad research abroad will ensure that your SEVIS record can remain active while you are abroad. So this means there wouldn't be a break in your immigration status, even though you aren't physically in the US. So if this is something that you qualify for and you wish to apply for, you need to make sure your department could approve this. And then there is an e-form in Access VIS called Graduate Research Abroad. You need to submit that form by August 24th. Make sure that you're registered full-time for the appropriate research abroad course that's within your department, and submit that form so that Visa and Immigration Services can review, approve, and provide the updated I-20 for you, indicating that you're approved for graduate research abroad. So that's an option for our graduate PhD level students. So that takes us through kind of the formal piece of this. Then we have some questions that you guys already submitted to us in advance that we want to answer. Our director, Meg Gambino, is going to walk through these with you, and then we'll move on to additional questions that you've submitted since we started this webinar.
Good morning. So one of the questions that we just received communication about yesterday is when U.S. consulates and embassies will reopen for regular visa processing. So we're happy to announce that U.S. embassies and consulates are beginning a phased resumption of routine visa services. The dates for each embassy and consulate will depend on the local conditions. So it's advised that you monitor the embassy or consulate in your area for updates on that. Will F1 students who are in the US be able to enroll in more than one online class for the fall semester? Yes. So based on SEV policy guidance that came out last week, students inside the US will be allowed to take more than one online class as long as you are taking at least one 3-credit in-person or hybrid course and making normal progress in your degree. So even if we are recommending that you enroll in any in-person or hybrid course that is a degree applicable. If there's not a specific 3-credit course, you can get a combination of classes. So it could be 2 classes. One class is 1 credit and the other class is 2 credits, as long as it totals 3 credits of in-person or hybrid coursework. Next slide, please. Can a student do the entire fall semester remotely from their home country on either a full-time or part-time basis? So from an immigration standpoint, students that are not in F1 status can study remotely on a full-time or part-time basis while outside of the US, as F1 requirements will not apply. It's only students who are maintaining or are continuing F1 students who must comply with the enrollment requirements. So that means if you are an incoming student for the fall semester and you're not able to arrive in F1 status, you can enroll in either a full-time or part-time basis. And the graduate school would need to know if that is your plan to enroll on full-time or part-time, because they would need to issue you an updated offer letter. So as far as visa and immigration is concerned, there is no requirement for part-time or full-time because you're not in F1 status, but the graduate school would need to know that plan if you're a incoming master's or PhD student. Does research for doctoral students count as an in-person course? Yes. Research and dissertation coursework will count as in-person. If you're inside the US and have finished all coursework except for your thesis or dissertation, you can maintain your F1 status while you're working on your thesis or dissertation as long as you're enrolled full-time. So doctoral students who are outside the US could consider graduate research abroad if this is where you are in your degree program. I have 1 semester left and all of my coursework is online. Can I finish abroad online? Is there a way to keep my status through this option? For students who are in the US this is your last semester of study, you are eligible to register and request part-time authorization for the fall semester if less than a full course load is needed to complete your program. You would, on that case, need to be in more than one, if you need more than 1 class to complete your degree program, at least one of those classes is required to be in person or hybrid. If you only need 1 class to finish your program, then that course must be conducted in person or hybrid, as there is a physical presence requirement for you to be in the US. Students who wish to request part-time enrollment who are in the US would also need to submit the part-time enrollment authorization request and access VIS so that we can confirm your degree progress and authorize that in Stevis. For students outside the US, with respect to SEVP's policy guidance for fall 2020, F1 students outside the US studying at the hybrid model may not be able to maintain your status while abroad. And therefore, unless you're authorized for study or research abroad, it's likely that your F1 status and Stevis record will be terminated for authorized early withdrawal. With that being said, as Lindsay mentioned before, you do not have to be in F1 status to enroll in classes. So even if you are abroad, you can still complete your degree program while abroad. My major is not offering any online classes. Do I have to take an in-person class? What should I do? Will I be terminated? So students inside the US will be allowed to remain in the US as long as they're taking at least 1 3-credit in-person hybrid course and enrolled full-time and making normal progress in their degree program. If your major or program is not offering any online classes and you're inside the US, you will have to enroll in at least 3. You'll still have to work to enroll in 3 credits of in-person or hybrid classwork. Graduate level students should speak to their department in regards to complying with this requirement, and undergrad students will receive more information on how they can comply in the days to come. For those outside of the country, if you cannot enroll in any classes, you'll have to take a leave of absence from the university, which would essentially result in the termination of your F1 status and Stevis record for authorized early withdrawal.
So about this question, there's a lot of understandable concerns about those of you who are in the US or plan to be in the US for the fall, and how are you going to get this one class 3 credits in person. So like we said, we want you to make every effort to enroll in a class that applies towards this. If you cannot, for grad level students, just as this FAQ answers, speak to your department, because we anticipate that departments, we will be working with them to find opportunities for students to comply. We will make every effort to ensure that we help you comply with this physical presence requirement for the 1 course. For undergrad, same thing, make every effort to find a hybrid course or an in-person course. If that is truly impossible for you, we assure you that in the days to come, hopefully within the next week, we will be providing some additional information on what opportunity will be available for undergraduate students to comply with this requirement if there is no other option available to you. So just be assured that the university is committed to this, the provost is committed to this, and we are actively working to make sure that we facilitate this compliance for you.
What should I do if I can't get into an in-person course? Am I guaranteed an in-person course? So as Lindsay just said, you should make every effort to enroll in 1 3-credit in-person or hybrid course, but if that's impossible, we will provide additional guidance in the days to come. As I mentioned before, a 1 3-credit in-person course can be fulfilled by enrolling in either 1 3-credit course or multiple courses that total 3 credits of in-person or hybrid coursework. Can I drop my hybrid class once I get my new I-20? No. In order to maintain your F1 status, you must be enrolled in and complete 1 3-credit in-person or hybrid course for the fall semester. I'm in the dissertation phase. Can I finish abroad? There are no immigration restrictions preventing you from completing your degree from abroad. However, we recommend you follow up with your department to ensure that there's no academic restrictions. How will delaying the arrival for spring 2021 impact practical training eligibility? So for a new F1 incoming student, you're required to complete 1 full academic term in F1 status to be eligible for CPT or OPT. So that means if you're completing your fall semester from abroad and you're not arriving until spring 2021, you would not be eligible for CPT or pre-completion OPT until spring 2022. Can I come on campus in the spring if I enroll for the fall semester online from abroad? Will my record be terminated? So students outside of the US who cannot arrive to the US for the fall may have their F1 status and Stevis record terminated for authorized early withdrawal if required by SEVP. This does not prevent you from enrolling in online classes while abroad this fall. And students who wish to return in the spring 2021 semester will have to request a new I-20 and apply for a new F1 visa prior to returning in January. If you departed the US prior to August 25th, it's unlikely that you'll be eligible for Stevis reactivation. So if we are required by SEVP to terminate your record if you cannot come to the US for the fall, then you will be provided with instructions on how to request an updated I-20 for the spring. If my record is terminated because I'm staying outside of the US for the fall, is it considered a bad termination? So no, termination of your Stevis record for authorized early withdrawal should have no adverse effects on your ability to return to the US in the future. If New York State forces Stony Brook to go fully online, will F1 students be required to depart the country per SEVP guidance? So as Lindsay mentioned earlier, the movement of all online classes after Thanksgiving is part of Stony Brook's formal fall 2020 reopening plan, which is going to be submitted to SEVP. As such, it will not necessitate all F1 students to depart the US. However, if Stony Brook moves fully online outside of our approved plan, we anticipate that SEVP will require F1 students to depart the US. There is open litigation surrounding this, so we hope to have more information in the days or weeks to come. Can you guarantee once I have my updated Form I-20 that I won't have a problem entering the US? So while certain entering the US is always at the discretion of CBP or Customs and Border Protection, and it's not guaranteed, we don't foresee students having any issues if they have their updated I-20 noting the hybrid instruction, in addition to having all of the other necessary documents, which include that updated I-20 with travel signature if you're a continuing student, a passport that's valid for 6 months into the future, and a valid F1 visa if applicable. When is the last day I can arrive? Am I allowed to travel to the US right now? What happens if I try to make it back and I can't? So in order to adhere with CDC guidelines, students traveling to Stony Brook from outside of the US or domestic states that require a 14-day stay-at-home period must have fulfilled the 14 days prior to the start of classes on Monday, the 24th. So students entering an initial status cannot arrive to the US more than 30 days prior to the start of the fall term. Continuing students or transfer pending students may arrive at any point prior to the start of classes. Students living on campus will receive additional information in the days to come regarding arrival procedures. Can a student studying remotely be paid as a TA and maintain their tuition scholarship? So from an immigration perspective, if a student is not maintaining their F1 status from abroad, there's no status requirements or limitations because the student would not be in F1 status. The graduate school has stated that international students can maintain their tuition scholarship. However, eligibility for employment from abroad is still being reviewed by the appropriate offices. Will CPT in the fall semester be considered an in-person lecture? In that case, will I be allowed to stay in the US? So based on SEVP's guidance for the fall, continuing students who are already in the US may remain in active status in Stevis if they're engaged in approved practical training, so that means CPT, OPT, or STEM, either as part of their program of study or following completion of a program. This means you could fulfill the in-person requirement as long as the internship is in-person or even hybrid. You will have to request CPT authorization and provide an offer letter that clearly documents how the internship will be conducted, for example, in-person or hybrid, and verify the existence of supervisory relationship throughout the period of your authorization. Will I be able to maintain my record even if I apply for a remote internship in the US based on a company for the fall 2020 semester? So if your internship is being conducted remotely, you will still be required to enroll in and complete at least one 3-credit in-person or hybrid course in order to maintain your status. Are OPT applications still being processed regularly? So at this point, we don't know of any imminent actions regarding OPT. USC is currently processing I-765 requests for qualified F1s within 3 to 5 months of receipt of your application. For more updated information regarding immigration, students visit our Visa and Immigration Services Summer and Fall 2020 COVID FAQ page. As Lindsay mentioned throughout the presentation, we're constantly updating this FAQ page as more information is received.
Okay, so that gets us through the questions that were pre-submitted that we were able to include, and now we'll do our best to work through some of the additional questions that you've submitted. Before we do that, Stacy, is there anything that you would like to clarify or say specifically related to international undergraduate new admits?
I want to thank all of you for joining us. I know that there's a lot of current students, graduate students, undergraduate students. I think that the Global Affairs Office and Lindsay and Meg covered all of the questions. So I know they're going to post this webinar, so I encourage you to rewatch it to get a lot of your questions. But if there are specific questions out there, please go ahead and ask them, and I'm here to answer them.
Thanks, Stacy. All right, Laura, do you want to ask some of these questions? There's a lot of questions that you guys have submitted, as in like 98 open questions. So we will not get to 98 open questions, but we will do our best. So Laura, you've hopefully been kind of monitoring that Q&A. Can you maybe ask some of the questions that we didn't already address or answer that could be useful to the group?
Yes, hi everybody. One question a couple of you asked is about if your Stevis ID will change if you obtain a new I-20.
So that's a great question, and the answer is if we are forced to terminate your record and you are not eligible for reactivation, and then that would mean a new SEVIS record is created for you, which means a new SEVIS ID, which then would likely mean a new visa process for you. Anything else, Meg, you want to add to that?
If you're deferring your admission, if we've already issued you an I-20 and you're deferring your admission or deferring your F1 program, then you will retain the same SEVIS ID number. We will just update your F1 program start date. For students who are continuing and who are in the US or plan to be in the US for fall, you will also retain the same SEVIS start date. We will just provide an updated I-20 with a remark indicating the remote instruction model.
Okay, next question. For returning students, would it be possible to be inside the US but not in Stony Brook / New York and still be enrolled full-time?
You have a physical presence requirement now as per SEVP, unless something changes. So we should be sure to clarify that this is as of 9:30 in the morning on July 14th, and information can change at any point. But as it stands now, the SEVP guidance is that students remaining in the US in active F1 status must have at least one course, 3 credits of in-person or hybrid. As such, that would necessitate you being available on Stony Brook's campus to fulfill that 3 credit in-person or hybrid course. Obviously, if the guidance changes, we will be sure to let you know, but at this point, you would have to be able to fulfill that in-person hybrid requirement for enrollment.
Okay, next question. What if spring 2021 goes online? How will that affect my status?
Oh, well, for now, we're trying to survive fall 2020, and we don't know for spring 2021. So as we were just given guidance last week for fall 2020, we would expect that if there's any changes for spring 2021, that guidance would also have to come from SEVP. It's important to know that as a school authorized to sponsor and support F1 students, we are therefore required to comply with the regulations through SEVP and the policy guidance through SEVP. So we will comply with that guidance whenever it comes, and we will share that information with you when it is available.
Okay, can I still graduate in fall 2020 if my status is canceled? Will taking remote classes affect my graduation?
From an immigration standpoint, no, you can still enroll in classes and complete your program from abroad. We do recommend that you just follow up with your academic department to confirm that there's no academic restrictions preventing you from doing so.
And then OPT would certainly be impacted if you're outside of the US. We do not anticipate students would be eligible, especially if you're no longer in F1 status while abroad, but even from abroad.
Okay, we have a question about filling out the fall planning e-form. Do all students need to fill this out?
Yes, so all students, whether you're an incoming new student returning from a leave of absence or a continuing student still in the US, every single F1 student at Stony Brook must complete the fall 2020 plan reporting e-form by 4 p.m. today.
It's important to know, I know a lot of you guys feel unsettled to submit that form because your schedule's not confirmed. There's things that we're waiting for SEVP to confirm. We really do, we understand, and we wish the timing wasn't what it was, but you have to submit that form for us because we then have to start updating the SEVIS records appropriately. So it's important to know that even if your schedule is not finalized, but you are either in the US or you plan to be in the US, then that's what we need you to tell us on that form. It's okay that your schedule itself isn't fully finalized. We need to know what your plan is because we have to start taking action in SEVIS to make sure that both we as an institution are compliant, but then also for you guys as students remain compliant with these regulations and policy guidance.
And Lindsay, if I can add for new students, I know many new students are are waiting to see if they can get a visa appointment, or if the visa appointment that they have for later in the fall can be expedited to still arrive. And while in earlier months we were so hopeful that that was going to be the case, now that it is July 14th and students would need to be here in probably 3 to 4 weeks at most, and there's still not flights, we are not as hopeful that that is the case. And so we really are encouraging students to at this point register for online and defer their start in, or update their I-20 for spring. And if for some miracle changes, we can probably always revert back to getting you here in a quick time. But because of this, in order to start your time here, we really do encourage to probably at this point move online if you cannot arrive.
Absolutely.
Okay, what are the consequences of termination of my F1 status and Stevis record?
So as we mentioned in the FAQs, there's no negative or adverse effects on your ability to return to the US in a future semester if you are terminated for authorized early withdrawal. Some issues that could come up: if you are completing your F1 program from abroad this semester, you would unfortunately not be eligible to apply for post-completion OPT, as presence in the US is required when applying for OPT. But other than that, if you are a continuing student and you are going to come back in the spring, there really shouldn't be any adverse effects to your eligibility to apply for a new visa and return to the US in the spring.
Are courses with an online lecture and in-person recitation considered an in-person course?
Yes.
Okay. Next question. The question from doctoral student: I'm going to be taking independent study this fall. How do I certify this is an in-person course?
So if it's what was a standard like research course that was previously considered in person, as we said on the presentation, dissertation research and research classes at the doctoral level will continue to be considered in person. Certainly you are welcome to have that documented in some way for your own records. We're not going to require that, but as long as you're enrolled in those courses that were previously considered hybrid or in person, that will remain for doctoral students engaged in dissertation and research classes.
Okay, if we as new students, can we start the classes remotely for fall 2020 and go to Stony Brook in the middle of this semester to finish?
No, you would have to, at the latest, have to notify Stony Brook and Visa and Immigration Services if you're not able to arrive by September 8th, as we would need to take action on your record to either defer your start date or cancel your SEVS I-20 altogether.
Meg, I see one person also asked about the leave of absence process. Can you explain to them from the VIS side of things, if they choose to take a leave of absence, then what do they do to request an updated I-20 at the appropriate time?
Sure. So if you're going to take a leave of absence for the fall semester, 3 months prior to the start of spring, you would submit the readmission following leave request and access VIS, and we would issue you an updated I-20. Students who have been outside of the country for more than 5 months would be issued an initial I-20, which you would use to pay the Stevis fee and apply for a new F1 visa. Those who have been outside of the country for less than 5 months may be eligible for record reactivation, but of course that's always at the discretion of SEVP.
I will just add, from an academic standpoint, you will need academic approval to return. There's typically forms in the registrar's office, and on the undergraduate level, academic advising and approval. So obviously if you're in good standing, there's typically not an issue, but you will have to complete some forms with the registrar's office as well to return.
Will the electronic I-20 document continue to be accepted by SEVP?
Yes, so we did get confirmation that we are eligible to continue to electronically sign and send I-20s to students for the fall 2020 semester. So those will still be able to be accepted and will be accepted when coming through the port of entry. Of course, you would have to print out the I-20 when you're coming to the port of entry to show the CBP officer. You cannot show it from your phone.
When will I receive my new I-20 showing the hybrid mode of instruction?
We're required to issue all of these I-20s by August 4th. So we're processing them in the order of which they received and should be and will be issuing them anytime between now and August 4th. So if you are traveling prior to that, you should make sure that you indicate your arrival date on your fall plan reporting e-form so that we can prioritize that request. But all I-20s regardless will be issued by August 4th.
What documentation do we need to enter campus, if any?
As usual, you would need a valid I-20. If you're a continuing returning student, that I-20 needs to have a valid travel signature that's been issued within the last year. You would need a valid passport that's valid for 6 months into the future, as well as a valid F1 visa if applicable.
And that's the guidance for entering the U.S. I don't know if whoever asked this question was meaning literally what you have to enter onto our campus. And if that is your question, I don't know that specific documentation is being required at this point, but certainly you will receive general campus instructions on any type of health and safety procedures, requirements, expectations. Some of that has already been shared with you in terms of the expectation of wearing face masks, maintaining social distancing, health and safety protocols related to if you're feeling sick and testing and all of that. But that will be general information to the entire campus community that will continue to be shared with you prior to the start of fall.
Okay, what precautions is the university taking for COVID-19?
So I can tell you since the start of this, the university has been very active in all of its discussions and how we as a campus can maintain safe practices while also continuing to provide the best possible academic experience for our students. And so I encourage you to continue checking the Coming Back Safe and Strong website. Information is being updated there in terms of what the university is doing. All of the communication that's been sent is being categorized there. So you can really see what's in place. And part of the hybrid instruction is for that reason, to really maintain a health and safety environment for our students, but also providing the best possible academic outcomes. So be sure and check that Coming Back Safe and Strong website to get the latest and most updated information on exactly what the campus is doing for our students.
Okay, we have a question about the 5-month absence rule from the US.
We haven't gotten any guidance on that it will continue to be waived. It was waived for the spring and summer semesters, but we have not received any guidance that it will be waived for this fall 2020 semester. So with that being said, students outside of the country for more than 5 months, we would have to take action on your Stevis record and you would have to request a new I-20 when returning to the US.
Anecdotally speaking, even the waiver that was approved for spring and summer, we're finding is being relatively strictly applied and not always successful for students has been our experience anecdotally with students requesting reactivation. So that is why we're not overly optimistic that reactivation would be an option for those outside more than 5 months. But as we've said, absolutely, if it's something that we can advocate for you on, we are and we will, and we want that to be an option, but it's ultimately at the discretion of SEVP.
Okay, we have more questions about the fall 2020 reporting form. If I'm unsure of my plans yet, how should I fill out the form?
So I think you have to complete the form based on what your plans are as of now. And especially if you have any thoughts of coming. I mean, if you're in the US, then you know you're in the US and you probably know if you're staying. So my assumption is if you're asking these questions, you're probably outside of the US. And if my assumption is correct, then what I would say is that if you are making every effort to be here, then that's what we need to know, because we need to give you an I-20 reflecting that. If then that decision changes, then certainly you can reach out to your VIS advisor, or we as Visa and Immigration Service will provide some follow-up instructions on what happens next. But if you are seeking to enter the US for the fall semester, you are going to have that updated I-20 in order to do so. So that's what we really need to know from you, and that's why we need to know your plans. For those of you who are remaining abroad, we are not taking immediate action in regards to the termination of your record. We are waiting for guidance on that. But we do really encourage you. We understand it's difficult to submit a form when there's so many things that are still uncertain. But as we've said a few times, we are up against a compliance deadline of August 4th for reissuing all of these forms. So that's why we have that deadline of today, and we want you to fill it out to the best of your ability based on your plans as of now.
I would like to defer my admission. What are the procedures I need to follow?
Well, if you're
You can take it from the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
if you're an undergraduate student and you wish to defer your admission, you would contact International Undergraduate Admissions at Enroll, INTL at stonybrook.edu. If you're a graduate student, you would need to contact your program department directly and discuss your eligibility for admission and which semester.
One important thing to make sure, and I saw a few questions, or at least one that came up on this one, like who can approve your deferral? So it's important to know admission deferrals are at the discretion of either International Undergrad Admissions or your grad department, including to which term you can defer. Some grad departments won't allow a spring 2021 deferral. Some of them will say go ahead and defer to fall 2021. That admission deferral is at the discretion of the academic department or International Undergrad Admissions. The deferral of your Stevis record is the responsibility of Visa and Immigration Services. So it's important to understand the difference. So when you defer your admission, then we will update your program start date on your I-20 to reflect that. Or if you continue to enroll online, we will change the start date of your I-20 program, but that doesn't affect your admitting date. So if you're taking classes for fall. So it's really important to understand the difference of those processes, because the terminology sounds the same, but they are very different.
I will add that undergraduate admissions is not sort of denying any request to defer. I will, however, let you know there are some specific honors programs that don't have a spring start date. So the University Scholars Program, so you can still defer your admission to spring, but you might not be able to start in like the University Scholars Program. So any of the undergraduate admission deferrals are being honored and allowed for, whereas in the past it was space limited. So we are being as flexible as we can in that respect.
Okay, we have a question about intake. I know under normal circumstances, incoming new students have to visit the VIS office in person. How will this change and what will be the procedure now?
Great question.
Great question. This semester is specifically special in that all students will be required to submit the intake. That is new incoming students as well as continuing F1 students, because we need to ensure that you have arrived to the US so that we can take the necessary action to validate your record for the fall term. With that being said, we will not be holding any in-person check-in sessions. Your intake will be submitted electronically, and your advisor will approve it based on the documents you upload. So there will not be an in-person intake process this semester, but you will still be required to submit that e-form in Access VIS and upload all of your documents electronically, including that electronic I-94 that confirms your arrival to the US.
Okay, this question I already answered, but I think it would be beneficial for the group. How do I get in touch with my advisor?
Sure. So your international student advisor, they're all listed on our website under the About Us tab. And advisors their caseloads are divided by first letter of your family name. So I would definitely recommend checking our website. If you're unsure who your advisor is, you can always email vis@stonybrook.edu and we will direct it to the appropriate advisor.
You can also just use the general appointment functionality, which is now all being done virtually. So you can do that, and any of our advisors could assist you through the appointments that are available.
Okay, we also have lots of questions about the availability of this webinar.
Sure. So this webinar will be posted on our summer and fall 2020 COVID-19 FAQ page following the presentation.
I saw a decent amount of questions about registration, solar, questions pertaining to that. Unfortunately, that's outside of our scope. So I would recommend, if you're having any issues or concerns with solar, depending on your level, if you're grad level, reach out to your academic department with registration related questions or availability to register. For undergrad students, you're going to reach out either to undergraduate colleges or academic and transfer advising services, and be sure to follow the information that's been shared with you through email and on solar, but they'll be the best ones to guide you regarding specific academic registration enrollment questions.
New students, so new undergraduate students have not registered for courses yet. So as you know, we were waiting for courses to be designated as online, as hybrid last week. And with the new release of SEVP regulations, there's sort of been a halt, and we are actually waiting for you to complete the form today to tell us if you're going to be online or coming to campus so we can register you appropriately. So it's even more important for you to complete that form so that you will then be contacted by undergraduate colleges to begin your registration process.
All right. Any one last question? Or I think there's a lot that are in there, but as I'm looking through them, I think we answered a lot of the questions that you guys were asking. So hopefully that's the case. And we certainly hope that this was helpful and beneficial to you. We really do understand there's a lot of uncertainties. There are a lot of unknowns. We recognize this is a very stressful time for you, for your families, for all of those close to you. And we are here to do our best to inform you, to educate you on what we know, to partner with you, to advocate for you. And so we encourage you to continue, use the resources available to you, access our FAQ page. It is being updated. We assure you it is being updated essentially every day with information as we learn it. So follow that page, reach out to Visa and Immigration Services. Be very careful in who you obtain immigration advice from. That advice really should be coming from Visa and Immigration Services. So use us as your resource. If you have questions related to your status and what that may mean, reach out to us. Don't reach out to friends. Don't reach out to anyone else. Really use us. That's what we're here for, and that's what we want to do for you. So certainly reach out. Use the information that's already available to you for the quickest responses. Make sure you're visiting those websites. We will continue to be in touch with you. We will add any appropriate questions on our FAQ page that we can. And we wish you all the best. We thank you for submitting that fall planning form. We understand that it puts you in a little bit of a difficult situation for those of you who don't have confirmed plans, but we appreciate you understanding the necessity of that form and the reason for the timing of it. and we thank you for complying with that deadline. And we wish you all the best. We hope that we can all partner together, work together, and make the best of this really unique and challenging fall 2020 semester, so that soon, hopefully spring 2021, we can all physically be back on campus together and resume some normalcy. But we're glad you're a Stony Brook student. We're here to partner with you, and we thank you once again, and we'll continue to be in touch in the days to come. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.